All right, we're going to look at some of the capabilities of our graphing calculator. And so let's look at this first one. Find f prime at 3. Now, I'm not saying you couldn't do this algebraically, but quotient rule, yikes. If you have a calculator and half of your AP test will be calculator, you will be making sure that you use that and knowing its abilities. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in y equals. I'm going to put that equation right here. If it's a fraction, I like it to look like a fraction. So I hit alpha y equals, which brings me this screen. And then I'm going to type my equation in just like it looks. Making sure I type it in right. And I have that equation. Now you do have to make sure that you're in, just for the purpose of calculus, I'm always in radian mode. And I like simultaneous because if I have more than one graph, y1, y2, it graphs at the same time. But that's kind of up to you. And so when I hit graph, I see a little piece up here. So that's the bad part about graphically. You're not exactly sure where it's going to go. But I can kind of see a little piece. So I could increase that y max a little bit and probably see a little bit more than the graph, more of the graph. Okay. So on the graphing screen, if you're actually looking at this screen, if you hit second calc, notice we've done all these other things. Look at number 6 now, dy dx. If I hit 6 and then hit the number 3 because I want the derivative at 3, my calculator will actually give me that value. So with the calculator, you always label everything. Literally, you can just write that down. And that's really cool. Now, I also want to tell you that you can do it on your home screen as well. So let's say you didn't have it in, you didn't really care about the graph, you just wanted to find it. Another option is for you to hit Math 8. And you see this screen. Now, this screen, you want to take the derivative with respect to what variable? X. Now what goes here is the equation. So technically you could type the equation right here, but if you already have it in y equals, don't ever type an equation twice. If you have it in y equals, hit alpha, trace, that will call up your functions, put in y1, and then you want to evaluate that at x equals 3. And notice the calculator gives you 14.9999. If we rounded to 3 decimal places, that would be 15. So I get the exact same thing both ways. So that's how you find a derivative at a point. Now I actually want to show you something else because this is really cool. It's not on your paper, but we're going to add this question in. Where does f prime of x equal 2? Again, I don't want to have to find that. Here's what I would need to write on my paper. Literally, if this were on AP, this is the amount of work I would show. F prime of x equals 2 at x equals, and then I'm going to get my answer. And you're like, well, how is it going to get the derivative? Here is my function. I am going to turn that function off. I'm not going to hit clear, I'm going to hit enter, which means the function is still in there, but the equal is not highlighted, so it's not going to graph it. Now into y2, I want to graph the derivative. Here we go, here are the buttons. You want to hit Math 8 again. You want to take the derivative of y1, so again, alpha trace, and you want to take it with respect to x. You're going to change it with x. And if you type in that notation, the calculator is going to graph the derivative of this guy without you actually having to find the derivative. And that's awesome. And so then if I'm trying to see where the derivative equals 2 into y3, I would put 2. These are the two that I want to intersect. That's why I like to turn this one off so it doesn't get confusing. Now let's look. Now it takes it a minute. Give it a chance. Oh, looky there. So there's my derivative. there's my function, and I'm going to do second calc intersect. Remember, with intersect, the up and down arrows will toggle it back and forth between your two functions. So I find it, I put it near, I'm going to hit enter 3 times. I go 3 decimal places, so I put 2.185. That is all you would have to write on your paper. Anytime you use second calc intersect, which you will sometimes, the important thing there is if you use second calc intersect, you have to write the equation the calculator is solving. You have to write that down. So notice I put f prime of x equals 2 at. That's the equation the calculator solved. So that's really, really cool. So these questions, the equation of the tangent line on a calculator, man, that just became easy. So let's practice doing another one. So let's do, we'll do number 4 together. Now, in the same way, it says write the equation of the tangent line of f of x. Well, when we did this by hand, what would need to be on my paper? When we did this by hand, we found f of 1 in this case. We found the derivative, so we found f prime of x, but the reason we found f prime of x was so that we could find the derivative at 1. Well, the calculator is going to find both of those things for me. Now, I realize this one's not too hard to plug in your head, but I'm going to, in case the numbers are ugly, I'm going to do it on the calculator anyway. So once again, I like doing things on the graphing screen, so I'm going to do it here. So I'm typing that equation in like it looks, making sure I type it in right. So 2 square root of x plus 5 over x, square root of x. Okay, so there's my function, and I will look at that. Good enough. Now, let's get these things on the calculator. So f of 1, I'm going to do second calc value when x is 1, and the calculator gives me 7, so I write that down. I then do, I want the derivative, so again, if I'm on the graphing screen, I like it this way better. I do second calc number 6, plug in 1. I go to 3 decimal places, so that's negative 1.5. And when I have that, easy breezy, y minus 7 is equal to negative 1.5 x minus 1. And that's my equation of the tangent line. Obviously, if the decimal places were not so pretty, you would go to 3 decimal places, and that's what you are to do. So that's what you're going to do on this worksheet, is use the calculator to get these values or this equation of the tangent line. The backside has the idea of you using that graphing. Like I said, how can you graph the derivative without actually finding it? I do want to give you one warning, and it's this. If I type in the absolute value, so if I find the absolute value under catalog because it's the first one, ABS. So if I do the absolute value of x, I know that you know what that graph looks like. And I could ask you about the derivative at 0. And you would tell me that the derivative of 0 it's not differentiable there because the derivative from the left and right are not the same. But watch what happens when I do this. When I do, and I plug in 0, notice this one gives me the derivative of 0. You have to be kind of smarter than your calculator and be aware, because what the calculator is actually doing, how it's finding the derivative, it's taking a point 0.000, I think 3 zeros, to the right of your point and to the left, and then finding the slope of that line. And so when you do the derivative at like a cusp, the calculator sometimes gives you a value that is not true because it's of how it's calculating it. So I just wanted you to be aware of that, in that if you're looking at a cusp, even though the numerical derivative will give you something, you have to be smarter than your calculator and know that that derivative does not exist at that point. So there you go. So use your calculator. You got to learn to be calculator savvy, and be wise about what the calculator is capable of doing, and that's a really good skill. So I wanted you to be aware of that, and have a good one.